to the session by Consultants Consortium of Chennai. And let me just introduce myself. I am Rama Venugopal and I'm the President of Consultants Consortium of Chennai. This is an association for management systems consultants. Predominantly, the association has members from management system consultants domain, which was created almost about a year ago, or I would say that it actually became operational and became active just before the COVID. I would say about 8 or 9 months old, it is technically speaking. And so this association has consultants who are into management systems consulting predominantly and who have been working with multiple sectors. The focus and objective of this association, the primary objective is industry education, is to educate the industry on an ongoing basis about standards, certifications, and regulations across various businesses, both in the national as well as at a global level. So this is part of this. Today's session is actually part of World Standards Day series. I'm sure all of you must be aware that the World Standards Day was celebrated on 14th of October. As part of the World Standards Day series, association has created about 5 or 6 programs on multiple topics in multiple domains, especially more so with more focused sessions around the World Standard Days theme this year. The theme this year across the globe is protecting the planet using standards. So the sessions were created around the theme, and we had about 5 or 6 programs. And in fact, today's session is the last program in the series. The purpose of creating today's session is actually to educate the industry about the international standards bodies. What we have seen as consultants been in the domain for many years is most often, the industry is actually more focused about certification programs or the certification schemes. And they know a little about the various ISO certifications, and more so in the small and mid-sized businesses domain, the more focused attention or the awareness on the international standards bodies, the various international standards bodies, or what is their role, what do they contribute, being these bodies, what is their contribution to the ecosystem, is something not many are aware. If businesses have to be globally competitive, if even a small and mid-sized business today, there is an aspiration to get into the global markets. This post-COVID-19, there is a strong forecast across the globe that India will emerge as a strong alternative supply hub to the global markets, because there are supply chain gaps in the global markets because of the excessive dependence on few countries. And now global markets have realized that they need to de-risk themselves, and they're looking at alternative hubs. And India is actually projected to contribute to the global supply chain also. Now, this is one business opportunity which even the small and mid-sized businesses cannot ignore, because the MSME businesses in the global markets also require supply chain from MSME businesses. So if a business has to be globally competitive and have to be in alignment with the global trade and commerce, they have to know a little about international standards and international certifications, because these are actually called conformity assessments. So it is the standards or the certifications, the compliance or lack of compliance to this in alignment with a global framework will either make or break the deals for the Indian businesses. So association has taken up this initiative of educating the industry on a frequent basis, regular basis, about the conformity assessment structure that is there globally. And today's session is actually just to brief you, educate you all about various international standards bodies and what do they do, what is their role to the global ecosystem. So we just welcome each one of you to this session. Maybe we expect and that each one of you will have a brief takeaway and some knowledge takeaway in the form of learning more about the global framework. And so today we do have two speakers, and we welcome Mr. Panir Selvam, who's the GM of Operations Manufacturing at NCS Corporation. One second, sorry. NCS Corporation, right, Kanti?
NCR Corporation.
Sorry, NCR Corporation. My
I'll
apologies.
share the slide.
Yeah,
I'll share the slide.
NCR Corporation. We welcome Mr. Panir, who's actually representing the industry today to discuss about their industry perspective or how they have benefited as an organization by implementing global standards, and what is their understanding about the global standards also. So, and then we do have a session by Karthi Tyagarajan, who's Governing Council member at Consultants Association, Consultants Consortium of Chennai, who will be talking about the various standards bodies and what is their role. And maybe I would like to just run through a small this thing on what CCC stands for, Karthi. Can I just share my screen?
Yes.
Then
Yes.
I will come to this. Yeah. Yeah, is the screen visible?
Yes.
Can you see the screen?
Yes. Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is about a brief introduction about Consultants Consortium of Chennai. As I said, this is an association of management system consultants. It's a registered association under Tamil Nadu Societies Registration Act as an association. The name of the society is Consultants Consortium of Chennai. As I said, this is a platform for management systems consultants, and of course we do have other consultants, and predominantly it is for management system consultants. So we do have sector-specific consultants with wide range of experience and skills and competent consultants from various industries and various domains. The key objective of forming the association is actually to focus on industry education, promoting quality as a part of National Quality Mission. National Quality Mission is an initiative by Government of India to promote quality on an ongoing basis and to improve the quality focus of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the country. So our core objective is actually to focus on that and to promote various management system standards that are needed to run the businesses and for various businesses across various domains, because management system standards are like an oxygen supply to the businesses. They'll see to it that the businesses run smoothly, seamlessly. And this association will emerge as the voice of management system consulting community in the country. To my knowledge, maybe I guess this is the first time there is an association exclusively created with more focus on standards, conformity assessments, and regulations. Again, our objective is knowledge dissemination to the industry on an ongoing basis about standards, certifications, accreditations, inspections, regulations. All these things form part of the conformity assessment structure, and each and every domain is again it's like a super specialty, and the focus is entirely different, but all these are again interconnected and interaligned, and they form part of your conformity assessment structure. So that's all about CCC today. This is a short introduction about the organization. So today's session is actually to discuss about the role of various international standards bodies and what do they do. And so we do have two speakers, and let me introduce both the speakers of the day shortly. Karthik, can I have the slide, please? Mr. Panir's slide. Yeah. So we have Mr. Paneer Selvam, and he is the general manager heading manufacturing operations in NCR Corporation India Private Limited. He is an MS in quality management and LSS, MBB, and QMS lead auditor. These are all the certifications that he's holding, and he's got about 27 years experience in the industry. He's worked across a diverse range of companies like Panasonic, the home appliances division, ICIL, electronics manufacturer, HEL, the fans division of OSHA, Polyflex. It is a tier 1 vendor for the automotive, part of the automotive supply chain management. So he is quite well versed with the various product certifications like UL, CSCA, IRAM, ECBS, etc. And his connect with management system certifications covering EMS and QMS standards since 1996, and OSHA's almost for about 2 decades again. And then TS 16949, which has again become an IATF. So the certification agencies that he has handled is TUV, UL, DECRA, and NVT. So we are going to listen to Mr. Paneer and who's going to bring his industry perspective. Welcome, we welcome you, sir. Welcome to our CCC session. We are looking forward to have more and more such engagements from you in future. Over to you, sir. Now we are looking forward to listen to you. Thank you.
Good evening to all, and thank you very much, madam. So thanks for introduction. Just I'm going to share my screen. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, sir. Visible, sir. Visible.
Yeah, it's clear, sir.
Okay. Once again, thanks for introduction and thanks for the opportunity to what we are doing in NCR. So before going to the a brief about NCR, NCR is a global company, is a global US-based company. We are dealing with the financial, retail, and hospitality travel product. In India, is mostly known as ATM. We are an ATM manufacturer, but we are not only an ATM manufacturer. We are also having a retail product, hospitality product, and travel products. We have three plant NCR owned manufacturing. One in Chennai that I am heading operation. And next one is the UK, that's in the European Union, in Hungary, Budapest. The next one is in Brazil. There are other lot of contract manufacturing supporting us, but this is our NCR owned manufacturing plant. In India, it's a 17 years of operation. There is a 135 years old company. This is, and there are 30,000 plus employees in globally, and 25 years in India. As a sales business, and in India itself, there are 3,500 employees in India, one of the second largest employee compared to US, about NCR. So for again, just a glimpse, what are the products we are making. This is where you can see the ATMs in where you are withdrawing a cash, and so these are some of the items we are exporting, and this is actually inside the ATM. Yes, the 2012 and the 22E only for Indian markets. All 22, 25, 26, 23, 27, and recyclers are for export business. And if you go for a recycler, it will be multi-functions. You can withdraw, deposit, cash deposit, coin dispenser, everything will be there in this kind of a machine. And it can work in a street also. There is no security required, that kind of a machine. This kiosk you can see in ATM, any bank, instead of your dealing with your teller. It can give all your is a supporting device inside the bank. These are the we call as a modules. S1, S2 is a cash dispenser in which the cash loading agency will be loading the cash, and you will getting a cash from here. That's an updated version of our dispenser, and this is the check processing model and a scalable deposit model. This will accept your check deposition, and this will accept both check and cash deposition in the ATM. This is about the products and our company. So, what are the certification currently holding by NCR and Chennai? We are QMS certified since from 2004 and EMS certified since in 2008. These are the management certification. If come to a product certification, we have a UL, CSA, IRAM, ECBS, MTech, CCC, and RGhost. These are the what of product certification. And so what actually standard will helping for industry? So this is the what of Chennai plant what we are doing. From actually from a 2002 we are operating. We are moved to a 2015 to the Mahendra University because we are in a Puducherry or Pondicherry. We have a rented building. Now we moved to our own building. February 2015 is commissioned, and this plant has been IGBC Gold certified campus. So that is a native species. 95% of a landscape, no special watering required, and the material used for over 15% recycled content, and the construction 30% locally sourced material, and our plant has been 450 kilowatts and a rooftop solar contributes to 25% of our power requirement, and 75% occupied area led by natural lighting. Low flow water fixtures has been 45% of water compared to any other facility. And latest HVAC system. So our plant has been certified by FM Global, H1 fire safety. So 25% energy saving technology, 100% rainwater saving or rainwater harvesting is installed, and 25% green area built in the factory design. And this is about the plant, and this is about where we are, Mahendra University. I think most of you know, but there is a first IGPC certified green township, and the first IGPC platinum certified school, and a bio-CNG plant yielding equivalent of 200 kilowatt power plant, there's 75 kilowatt of solar power plant, and 100% landscaping water needs met through a treated water net. There is no special water record, and the biodiversity management, and 1 lakh tons carbon emission reduction. And the last year, the sapling about 1.5 lakhs of planted in 50,000 volunteers. It's about the Mahendra University, is about our NCR. So in addition to that, our plant has been all bulbs or lights we are using for LED bulbs to reduce the power consumption. And normally in the MNC we have a common printer system. So usually they'll give a printout, they're unable to they'll forget to take out the printouts. So that will create a generation of waste paper. Last year we came out with a suggestion because we have a continuous improvement process. Part of that, there is a Kaizen system. They suggested giving a password. If you give a printout, it will be attached to a password. So you can enter your password in the printer, then only the printout will come. So the waste paper generation is a zero now. And we are reusing the pallets because we will receive a lot of materials from our supplier. We are using the same pallet for a kits packing. Kits means a service support, any service support material is sending to the same pallet. And previously our dispenser our dispenser has been packed with the EPS material. By changing the design, we have changed to EPS to wood, So the cost also come down for 30%. That will yield to 1.1 million US dollar saving. And also we are come out of EPS and now we are using a wood. This is one of the again best thing is recycle bin. Normally from various vendors from our Indian source, we are receiving from carton boxes, whatever they are packing. But by the system, we are certified by ISO EMS. So how to reduce the waste? Because ours is an assembly industry. Everybody we came up with why we cannot recycle the bin system for our local vendors. We have vendors in Bangalore, or major vendors. So we have started a recycling bin. So that is zero packing cost. It's a win-win situation for a supplier and a NCR. So the supplier also engaged in this. They invested 50% of the cost of bin. NCR invested 50%. So now the material coming with the bin. So we are recycling the same bin to them. So by that kind of action, so 42 tons of waste is a combination of plastic, metal, cardboard, wood. So 42 tons of waste has been generated per annum. Then our water saving, this usually we'll do year on year. So this is about a Chennai plant. So as a NCR, as a global company, what we are doing for a society as in a global initiative. It's with respect to climatic change. So our ATM, if you take our ATM, if any machine will, definitely there will be a breakdown or there will be any support record when it is going for a breakdown. The latest version of self-service technology has been inbuilt in our ATM. So last week we celebrated 1 million self-service ATM installed in the field. The beauty of that, it will self-diagnose itself. The attention record to attend the makeup ATM is very less compared to the previous model of ATMs. So your maintenance, material, energy, and fuel usage will be saved. So we introduced a self-service diagnostic gateway. And this is the next big thing, the thermal recipe. So if you see the 2ST trademark is a once NCR patented technology, thermal receipt printing technology, which allows both side of your thermal paper. It can printing, you can print the in a thermal paper. That will reduce paper waste generation by half. For a thermal paper, we are only the manufacturer for the entire globe. So if you can imagine how much waste reduction has been happened in this technology. The same way, the waste disposal air emission, we are year on year we are improving, and this is our carbon emission. Our global, they say GHQ means is a Georgia, our headquarters. They have a plan, scope 1 and scope 2, how to control the carbon emission through our industry, through our manufacturing plant, through our service networks. The other year on year, they have a target how many visits to the ATM it can be reduced so that your emission will be reduced. This regarding the climatic change, this is regarding the product recycling. Unless other product, ours is a mechatronic product, everybody knows. So there's a product recycling is one of the biggest concern. We have been compliant with all these US standard or international requirement standard. California, if take a case of California E-Waste Recycling Act, covered electronic waste recycling. NCR giving a fee $3 per display if less than a 15-inch, if a greater than 15-inch or less than 35-inch, NCR giving a $4, and if it's greater than 35-inch, it will be a $5. It is not charging to the retailer. NCR owning the cost for recycling that display. And you must have, everybody know this, there is a WE directive for a European Union. We have been compiled with August 2005 itself. These are again US local law, mainly e-waste law. We had to comply with the 2006. All the US, all the electronic waste has been recycled through only mining. That's the company name. We are complied with the 2006. And the mercury containing products, this again is related to US. We have been, because NCR sometimes we are in a computer business also. Actually, during the start of the computer era, NCR is a company started very early in the computer business. I think, I don't know how many of you know, IBM is, IBM chief has been worked in NCR. He has been fired from NCR and he started the company. That's the company's IBM. So, because at that time NCR making a computer, if you see the generation of computers, we are there in a solid state itself. So solid state electronic, then now we are in a microchip level, the generation of computer. By NCR in the solid state device itself. So we have a Oklahoma computer equipment recycling program. So we're also compliant with that. So there is no charge to the customer. We are collecting all the waste from a consumer and we are disposing that. ROGAS, I think most of you know very well about this. We have been compliant in 2006 itself, very early stage of ROGAS implementation. And apart from this, these are the CSR activities. Is managed only with a local plant in Chennai. In 2006, we are given an ambulance to the local medical college. That was a government, actually, this is the government medical college. It's a smart classroom in a jungle seminary school. For the same school, we are inaugurated the RO plant. And during the cyclone, there is a lot of tree has been gone in Mahendra World City. We planted about 500 trees in the 2008. This year we are building supporting a local school to build the classrooms. So that's all. Any clarification, doubts, questions? On a very simple note, I will close this. Standards as more important are driving. If you take an NCR case, standards is driving us to save Earth. That is the one single word I can close my presentation. Madam, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pani. Thank you for the session and a detailed presentation on what NCR Corporation has been doing and implementing under various quality management systems standards requirements. We will take the Q&A session towards the end of the program. Let us move on to the next session. Finally, we can have all the questions of the audience addressed. We request the participants to post their queries in the chat box. We will now move on to the second session of the day. This is the topic is the international standards bodies. Who are they and what do they do? What is their role? This session will be addressed by Karthi. Can you just have the introductory slide, Karthi? Yeah, thank you. Karthi Tyagarajan, he is founder of Nucleus Consultants and he is a principal consultant, lead consultant, come CEO. He is a practicing management system consultant for the past 16 years. He's also a sector agnostic consultant, but very focused in a few domains. He's been into consulting, training, and auditing services for various management systems. And as I said, into very specific sectors and focused on specific standards like AS 9100, which is for aerospace industry, NatCap. Maybe this is for which domain, Karthi? NatCap is for?
Aerospace and defense.
There is also, okay, or defense and aerospace, and IRIS is for railways. IATF is for automotive industry. ISO 13485 is for medical devices manufacturing. TL 9000 is for telecom space and various other management systems. He also holds lead auditor certification, certified lead auditor for AS 9100, ISO 13485, IATF 16949, and various other management systems. So let's listen to what Kathy has got to say about the various international standards bodies and what do they do. Over to you, Kathy. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, madam. I will just share my screen. Please check.
Yeah.
Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Yeah, my presentation is visible to all.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, so welcome all to this international standard bodies and their role. So that is what today we are going to discuss. So I just touching these three important topic. Let's start with some basics. What is standard? Why standards are developed? What it contains? Then we'll move to the international standard bodies. We are familiar with few international standard bodies. We are going to touch them. And what is the standard bodies does? What is their role? And what is our role as a stakeholders, as a users, as a practitioner? What is our role with respect to this standard? That's what I'm going to touch on this session. So usually this is online training. I try to move it a little bit interactive mode, even though we have very limited participant. So I hope this participant are from precise groups. Let's start with a small quiz. What is this? We are doing online seminar, online webinar, and we are conducting some exams. It is not exam. We can check our knowledge with respect to the standards. So I just post a small link in chat window. Just have a look. Try to attempt it. It doesn't take you few minutes. I'll give you a few minutes to attempt this. First of all, check that whether the link is working. If it is working, fine. Can someone please respond on this? So this will help us to understand the standard in a better way. Is this link is working for you?
It's opening, Karthik.
Yes, thanks. Just make an attempt. With this, after this quiz, I would like to take this session. So I'll give you a few minutes, 2 minutes, let's say, exactly. Just make an attempt. I know few participants are very expert in this standard field. Few participants have no idea about what standard it is. Let's try to hear from both of you what exactly the standard is. Okay, I got one response. So I'll check if at least 50% of participants have responded. I can move to the next slide. See, many times we have this question in mind: what these standard bodies does, how they work, how they develop a standard. First of all, why we need a standard? What type of standard I should adopt? Is it national standard or international standard or sector specific standard? So every time industry has a lot of question on this. So we'll try to address those questions during this particular session. Okay, thanks whoever responded so far, and whoever attempting, please, I'll give you a few more minutes, few more seconds, not minutes. Okay, so you can take your time to finish this. I'm going to discuss the results of this quiz end of this session, not now. So thanks for attempting it. Okay, my screen is visible to you all, right? Okay. So first of all, let's start with the word standard. Have you considered this? How come the weapons, tools, which is identified or which is observed by the archaeologist across the globe, it looks similar, almost similar. Either you call it South African 70,000 years old some archaeological tools, or near to Chennai, there is one place called as Adirambakam. In British period onwards, they have found some archaeological evidences which go back to 270,000 years. Both tools look similar. How come it is possible? If you look at Greek Roman tools or coins, what they have issued, right? And also the coins which is used near down south of Kilidi, it almost looks similar. How come it is possible? That time we don't have this communication, this much of transportation. Forget about Bronze Age or Gold Age. Think about the Stone Age. How come the human race across the globe at different parts think the same way? Do they have some standard? Did they follow some standard? What do you think? What comes to your mind? So the question, why standard? What is standard? Let's address this. Standard, we call it a simple way. Standard is an agreement. That's a simple word. We could someone say what is standard in one word. If someone want to say what is standard, it's an agreement. This is the agreed way of doing something. Either you produce a product or you are making a process, like I'm going to do a welding, I'm going to do a soldering, I'm going to paint this, I'm going to make a PCB board, or you are delivering a service. Services like providing banking services, providing healthcare solutions, and supplying any material. So there are some agreed ways between you and your customers, or there is an agreed way between you and your contractors. So typically standards can cover multiple activities undertaken by your organization. Sometimes it is mandated by your customers, and sometimes it is mandated by the regulators. ISO says this. This is the exact text I have taken from ISO. Standards are distilled wisdom, we could say. Subject matter experts develops the standard. They understand what exactly the industry needs. ISO represents people from manufacturing side, sellers, buyers, customers, even regulators, trade association across the globe. They jointly developing the standard. It is always possible to organize people effectively rather than consensual agreement, or even rather than through fictions or myths. When it's come to trade, when it's come to economy, there is always supported by this trade and economy by value-based standards. Standard and standardization are very important resource for the entire human society. Yeah, can you please mute your mic so that? Yeah, thanks. So typically, in a simple way, standards are internationally agreed by experts. When I say agreed, this is agreed by nations, industries, regulated through agreements, the multiple way. So if you want to talk about the history of standard, I would like to touch few things. Forget about the Stone Age or Bronze Age or Golden Age. Let's talk about recent times. It all the way go back to 17th century. Steam engine was invented by Mr. James Watt. That is what the start of, we could say, tip of the industrial revolution, right? So slowly people move from cottage industry to a machinized production process. What happened in late 18th century? USA was in a great demand of a large sum of rifles and bullets. There is one person named Mr. Ailey Whitney. He got a contract to deliver 10,000 rifles within 2 years. And there is a condition in a government contract, this rifle should be in line or identical with the France. There is a French based rifle at that time, it was famous. So the government wanted that it should be in line with this French maker rifles. So this person, Mr. Ailey Whitney, so he introduced the concept called as standardization, interchangeability, interoperability. So typically we call him as the father of standardization. We all know how the standard playing very important role in World War. When we say standard, obviously we thought of military standards, right? Most of the standard systems are came through military. Historically, the technical innovation and standardization all always grown together. When we started from invention of DC motor to today 5G or this artificial intelligence, everywhere, even blockchain technology, everywhere standardization follows the technology, or we could say technology follows the standardization. All these standards are made voluntary purpose. So it's up to us to decide. When you say as a manufacturer, you need to take a call. Who is your customer? Where you want to place your product? So which standard you want to adopt? If your products are specific to restricted to domestic market, then you follow the national standard. If your product goes to across the globe, then we have to follow the international standard. So it depends on the application, depends on the what product you produce. The standards are typically knowledge. My screen is not visible to you. I think few people have said it is not visible. Can someone please respond?
It's clear.
Yeah, thank you. So standards are very powerful tool which drive innovation and increase productivity. People who use standard, people who practice standard, they realize this very much. The ultimate aim of any standard is make people life easy. And of course, safety, reliability. Now the whole theme of the World Standard Day is protecting the planet. The standards are in different subjects. You call it a nanotechnology to a cricket ball, there are standards. How come all the cricket ball across the globe played in international cricket or IPL cricket or T20 cricket or Ranji Trophy, the ball's size? Who decides the ball size? There is an ISO standard. Who decides the dimension of a goalpost? Either you play hockey or football. Who decides the dimension? So there is a standard. So sometimes standards are very specific and sometimes standards are very generic, like quality management system. It's a very generic standard. So what is the benefit of the standard? Very simple. It facilitates a fair trade. It gives framework for various economies for interoperability, and it ultimately enhance consumer protection and confidence. So this is what the whole purpose of standard. So why an organization need to adopt a standard? Why you are practicing a standard for any organization or any individual, why they are following some standard is, there are three options or three reasons behind that. You can pick any one, or you can say all are applicable. It depends on your product. Most of the standards are voluntary. If you used to know about quality management system, there is a requirement called as 8.3.3 design and development input. When you design a product, you need to select your inputs. So one of such input is a standards, code of practices, right? And many times customer requirement calls for a standard. Your customer contract or specification says my product should meet this so and so standard. And sometimes it is a regulatory requirement. Every country having their lot of regulations, and each regulators have identified safety standards and they make it mandate. Now take a call. What standard you followed in an organization? Why you adopted the standard? What is the reason behind that? Is it a voluntary requirement, or is it a customer contractual requirement, or no, it is a regulatory requirement, so I have to follow this. So this is how the industry adopting the standards. Now coming to international standard bodies. Before reaching this, there are plenty of private standardization organizations exist across the globe. Even before this, the international standard bodies are emerging. If you look at 18th century, we have ASME, American Society of Mechanical Engineers. And we all know ASTM, there is an organization, right? American Society for Testing and Material, right? This organization was formed in 1989. And there are multiple organizations across the globe exist even before the international standard bodies emerges. Let's take England, United Kingdom. They have a British Standard Institute, which was started in 1990s. Sorry, 1900s, not even 1990s, 1901. Germany, they have their own DIN standard bodies. So these are the national specific standard bodies. So in 1946, there is a conference which happened in London. There are 25 representatives across the globe have attended this particular conference, and they decided to form an international organization. So that is what ISO is. And IEC also incorporated along with ISO, but they have divorced in 1976. Why? Because they wanted to separate it from, they wanted to develop standards for electrotechnical related standards. And ITU, this is initially called as International Telegraph Union. Now there is no more telegraph, so they have modified, they have moved to International Telecommunication Union. So these are the three sister standard bodies, we could say. These are the three international global standard bodies. So ISO, we all know what is ISO is. Various places we could see ISO. International Organization for Standardization. If you pick this first three letter, it should be IOS. But instead of IOS, we call it as ISO. Why? Because there is a Greek word called as isos. In Greek language, isos means equal. So from that word, this ISO was derived. So isos means equal. So it's a non-government independent organization. We could see almost 165 national standard bodies are member in ISO. India also one of the founder member for this ISO. So they have representatives from across the globe, and they form some technical committees and they develop the standard. And IEC, this is one of the global sister organization of these three standards, we could say. So they develop standards for electrotechnical, electrical, electronic related technologies. And ITU, this is more on ICT, information and communication technology standards they develop. For example, today when we say talk about 4G, 5Gs, right? So those are all controlled through ITUs. So how ISO operates? What ISO does? ISO creates international standards. Each country have their own member, the national standard bodies. They represent ISO. They follow this particular structure. One country, one member policy. In India, our representative is Bureau of Indian Standard, BIS. Individuals or even organization, individual private organization cannot become ISO member, but there are some ways as an individual you can contribute in the standard developing process through your national standard bodies. So this is the picture, big picture we could say. We could say 165 members across the globe represent ISO. There are some national standard bodies. I would like to touch that also. BIS. This is our Indian national standard body. They develop standards, even they develop and certifying the goods. You might have seen a lot of ISI certified product, right? Can you name some ISI certified product which we are using in our day-to-day life? Can you please post that in your chat window? Do you use any ISI based or ISI certified products? Yeah, this IS 14543, yes, that is famous for bottled drinking water, right? If you look at these Aquafina, Kinley, Bisleri, if you look at the package, you could see ISI certified. Very good. Other than that, just look at your home, or let's just look at your office. The many products what we are using are based on some standard. And BIS certifies those standards. Few standardization, few manufacturing licenses are mandatory, few are voluntary. Yeah, N95 mask, yes, of course, but that is voluntary or mandatory. So that's a question always you have to check. Yes, helmet, that is another good example. You could see helmet with ISI, without ISI also, right? Yes, look at the bulbs, tube lights, pressure cooker, iron box, many products coming to industry. So if you develop any product, so there may be a product specific standard. So what BIS does, so they provide traceability and tangibility benefit to the national entire economy. There are multiple ways they ensure safe quality product reaches the consumer. Initially, Bureau of Indian Standard was a standard making body, but later, based on various regulatory requirements, and they have moved into product certification scheme. And there are compulsory registration scheme like bottled drinking water. There is a compulsory registration scheme. Now, a lot of things are now made it compulsory to promote this Atmanirbhar, right? There are a lot of movement we could see in with respect to BIS certification. And they also launched a hallmark scheme. We all know, well, 916 hallmark gold, right? There is another famous scheme. And they also have a lot of laboratory across the country. This is what BIS does as an organization. And of course, I would like to highlight one more organization, national standard body, that is British Standard Institute. We all know this famous London's Tower Bridge, right? Who designed? That person is the founder of this particular British Standard Institute. BSI is one of the pioneer standard making body, I could say. The world, entire world is now focusing or move towards this quality system, right? Quality management system. The initial quality management system standard was developed, published by the British Standard Institute. Initially, it was called as BS 5750. That is the initial standard. Later, it was called as ISO 9000. ISO adopted it. So the first quality management system standard, we could say it is BS 5750. And many things we could say. Even now, people are talking about protecting planet, environment, right? Even environmental standard also, there is a initial standard. BS have released a standard called as BS 7750. This is for environmental management system. We all know OSHA's previously. This is the British standard. Now it has become ISO 45001. So BSI also one of the pioneer in standard. Like this, every country having their own standard making bodies, and they represents ISO. So when it's come to standard, we classify the standards into three category, or many category, but I would like to highlight here three category. Mainly management system standard. Most of we as a consultant, typically we at Consultant Consortium of Chennai, we have more member. Predominantly we represent this management system consulting field. Quality management system, environmental management system, energy management system, food safety, information security. There are plenty of management system standard. These are all very generic standard. It is not talking about any product. But there are a lot of product standard published by ISO. We could say almost 35,000 standards are published by ISO. Most of them are product specific. And there are a lot of guidelines, references released by ISO. Okay, so let's have a small video. I would like to play a small video, understand this whole standard making process. Yeah. So can you see this video? Is it visible to you?
Not yet. Yeah. Yes, yes.
The audio is coming?
Yes, yes. Audible.
So there is a standard for every product. Now let's have a small question. What is the time now? Can anyone tell me what is the time in your watch? Just look at your watch and tell me what's your time. What's the time now?
5.
But look at the mobile. What is the time now? From your watch, what is the time?
5, 7.
Mobile, what is it? Then what is the standard time? Who decides the time?
Okay.
There is a standard, ISO standard, international standard time.
Just 15 more minutes. Note to self, wash socks. You know those care label and symbols we see
There are
on
standards
clothes?
for label,
Yep, that's an ISO standard too.
symbol,
While we wait, did you know there's an ISO committee
even standards for
brewing
coffee.
standards? They have served 24 to date. Get it? Oh, and there's an ISO committee on dentistry. The least scary
For
ones are
toothpaste,
standards
brushes,
for toothbrushes,
there are an ISO
toothpaste, and
standards.
dental floss. And there's an ISO cosmetics committee where 60
So how many brush, how many fibers in your brush? What is the toothpaste requirements? So there are some ISO standards. Cosmetics,
countries
there are some
develop
ISO
standards for everything from sunscreen to shampoo. Okay, don't laugh, but there are standards for
Those
doors.
lifts.
Did you know that
There are
NASA
standards.
consulted an ISO standard for elevator acceleration when they made the capsule that rescued the 33 Chilean miners in 2010? I'm gonna be late. You know who's never late? The Secretariat of the Clocks and Watches Committee, which, surprise, surprise,
Watches,
is
there are
held by the
standards.
Swiss. Gotta pedal as fast as I can. Thankfully, there's a whole series of standards making sure bicycles are safe. Now wheels, go
Automotives,
faster.
bicycles, there are
Talking
standards.
about wheels, this one will run you over. ISO experts have developed nearly 800 standards for road vehicles. Just got sprayed. If only we all used the new water footprint standard to avoid wasting water. Ooh, shaky bridge. If you're testing the vibration of road, rail, and pedestrian bridges, don't forget to use
There are
ISO
test
standards.
for various products.
All this is possible thanks to the thousands of experts that volunteer their time and effort to make standards. We
So
are
this is
the
what ISO is. So many products what we use in our life, knowingly, unknowingly, it's based on some standard. It may be an ISO standard, or it may be a national standard, or it may be the voluntary organizational standard. So this is what all about ISO does. So now tell me, in your organization, do you practice, do you follow any ISO standards for your product? Yes, as a management system, you might have certified for a different standard. Do you follow any product specific ISO standards? So as an organization, you need to consider that too. Okay, so typically, who developed the standard? How the standards are developed? So this is like a symphony. Do you know symphony, right? We know the famous Ilayaraja symphony. ISO is nothing but a conductor of that symphony. A lot of subject matter experts across the globe, through their member bodies, they develop the standard. So ISO plays a role of a conductor. So these are the three major players, we could say, involved in the standard making process. Technical committees. ISO forms a lot of technical committees, though technical committee include members on the subject matter expert, and they develop the standard. When it's come to quality, we have ISO TC 176. So this is the technical committee who developed quality management system standard. Similar way, for environmental management system, there is a technical committee. So every sector, they have their own technical committees. As of now, they have 333 technical committees. This is the recent technical committee they have formed. This is for lithium. And there are standard bodies, we call them as other standard developers. There are some industry bodies like International Institute of Welding, a lot of institutes, right? They are also representing in the ISO, and they develop standards. And this is what very important. There are a lot of national or industry specific standard developing bodies. There we can have ASQ, ASTM, SAE standards, IATF body, IAQG, UNIFI. These are all industry specific bodies. UNIFI is for railway industry, IATF for automotive industry, IAQG is for aerospace industry. So they are also in line with ISO. They are also representing in ISO. These are the other standard bodies, we could say. So whether you are a consumer or you are running a business, you can also be a part of standard making process through your national bodies. So all these ISO standards are developed by subject matter experts. Why I'm repeating at various places, it was developed by subject matter experts. We need to understand, it is not like someone who is not related to the field who developed the standard. A lot of efforts are putting behind the standard. How many of you came across errors in ISO standards? After publishing, when we started using an ISO standard, do you encountered any errors or some issues in the standard? One thing we understand, standard is not standard because we need to revise it, amend it when there is a change. The industry is getting changed, the world is getting changed, the economy is getting changed, the way we do business is now changed. So standard also has to undergo a own revision process. So all standards are developed based on a consensus approach. So all stakeholders has to vote, then only a standard will become an international standard. So this is the typical standard development process. Most of you may not aware about this. Let's throw small light on here. Initially, there is a proposal will be put. Okay, let's develop a standard for this. Let's take artificial intelligence. Now, smart cities, blockchain, a lot of emerging technologies are coming. So let's develop a standard for that. So they identify the subject matter experts. Initially, there is a committee draft will be prepared. Output of this committee draft maybe either it's a committee draft or a publicly available standard. It's called as PAS. Then there will be a technical committee will be formed, and they develop ISO DIS, draft international standard. Sometimes we call it as ISO TS standard. Do you heard about any ISO TS standard? A lot of ISO TS standard you might have used. Some TS standard now become obsolete. Have you came across any such standard, ISO TS standard? TS means technical specification, which means the standard is still under technical development. Later it may become an ISO standard. So a technical specification is a standard published for immediate use. It needs a lot of feedback from the industry. One such ISO TS standard, previously we all know ISO TS 16949. Now that is now become obsolete, that moved to IATF. Now Iris industry started, railway industry, now they call it as ISO TS 22163, right? That is what railway standard. And sometimes people are using TR, technical report. Again, technical report contains some information. which talks about different type of various versions to different publications. So they contain some of the reports, surveys, what happened. Because simply call it as state of art of technology, what is available in the industry. That's what technical report. So once draft international standard is made, then it flow down to the various member bodies, and they will put their comments, and finally there is a final draft international standard will be released among the members. Based on the vote, there is a minimum mandatory vote is required. Based on that, a standard will become an international standard. So this is what visible to the external world. Behind that, these are all happening. This is not visible to the external world. As a user, we straight away go to ISO site, we came to know what are the standard available, what is the latest version. So this is how the standard itself is developed. So what is the role of international standard bodies in protecting the planet? That is what the whole theme we are discussing, right? Protecting the planet. So what their role? We heard about WTO, TBT, right? World Trade Organization, the technical barriers to trade agreement. So most of the countries have signed this. So what TBT agreement strongly encourage the entire member is they have to adopt the international standard to facilitate the trade. This will help us to achieve transparency and also able to do some predictable trading, right? So that is what the whole purpose. So international standard bodies, what ISO so far does, let's talk about ISO. We all have this US sustainable development goal, right? So there were multiple goals. What ISO does is they develop standard for all these 17 sustainable goals. If you take any sustainability goal, they have a standard for prevention of poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, education, gender equality. So you can straight away connect this with how they are protecting the standard. So let's talk about this affordable and clean energy. For this particular sustainability goal, they have under almost 261 standards. For climate action, they have 370 standards. So they keep on developing a lot of standards. This is can you please mute yourself?
Hello.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I wrongly muted someone. Yeah. So these are the various efforts made by ISO to contribute on this sustainable goals. Almost for all sustainable goals, they have a standard. Plenty of standards. So it's up to the organization to adopt based on voluntary decision or based on customer contractual requirement or based on the regulatory requirements. So typically most of the organizations where we provide training, where we provide consultation, or where our co-consultant operate in this field with respect to protecting the planet, with respect to environmental management system, occupational health and safety management system, energy management system. So now I leave this to this forum or people who are going to watch this later through online. What could be your role in this? Protecting the planet. Standard development bodies develop standard and release the standard. What we could do, when we are going to do it, how we are going to do it, why we need to do. Almost the reason why question is almost answered, right? Based on the, now we are talking about climate change, we're talking about various nuclear weapons, nuclear safety. Now this pandemic taught a lot of lessons. So why we need to protect the planet? There is no question, but why as an organization, why as an individual I need to do, what is my role in it? So you can ask these questions. 9:32. So this some of the thing I would like to address this forum as a fact check. Many people, this is what the quiz initially I have asked with you. ISO does not certify any organization. I'll repeat again. ISO does not certify any organization. There are different type of organization exist who got a formal accreditation, those certification bodies are able to certify a organization. Even ISO does not certify any product. There are independent laboratories who got an approval, they can certify the product. So ISO is not into certification business. They are only a standard making organization. And one more thing I would like to highlight, standards are not free. Every standard is not free. That is what I would like to highlight. Now let's take Bureau of Indian Standard. They make most of the Indian standards available free for our users. But most of the standards are intellectual property of the concerned standard bodies. So you have to respect their copyrights. So you have to buy the official copy and use it as far as possible. That's what I would like to request all. And this is very important. The whole purpose of this training, the standard bodies are not alien. They are from us. They are for us. As an individual, if you are feeling you are the subject matter expert in this field, you can always contribute. You can reach your national standard bodies. In India, we can reach our Bureau of Indian Standard. Through them, we can reach the technical committees and we can able to contribute ourselves. Okay, so now I'll leave this to Q&A. Madam, now you can please take you over here.
Thanks, Karthi, for a detailed session on standards and various management systems. Very interesting session. Now, participants, do you want to ask any questions? You can unmute yourself and you can ask, or you can post the query in the chat box. Because it's a very small gathering, it's a small group. I guess you can unmute yourself and you can ask the questions.
Yes. You can please unmute yourself. If you have any questions, please ask.
Even now, after so many years that the standards are in use and the management systems are in place, still not much of clarity in the industry, honestly speaking, about the role of standards making bodies or the role of certification bodies. Karthi was in the last slide very emphatically, he said ISO is only a standards making organization. They don't issue certificates. But how the industry, even now today, majority of the players in the industry have understood is whenever they display the certificates, it is you find an ISO logo in the certificate. They say that we are certified by ISO. The standards bodies are different, and those who issue certifications are different, and those who accredit all this certification bodies are different, and the global platform for all this accreditation bodies is different. So as I said originally, all these things are called conformity assessment structure. That is why we have decided to do some specific sessions, focused sessions on standards. There are various international bodies who make standards, and they are country specific, and some of them are globally renowned. So industry prefers to work with the global bodies also, because when they are into exports, they have to follow the regulations of the importing countries. So they have to follow the standards mandated by the destination countries, whether it is a product standard or a management system standard or the certification or the testing. In a global market, these are decided and defined by the destination countries and the importing countries' regulations. In the domestic market, these are defined by our regulators. So please ask questions. We will just leave the session open for you all. One by one, you all can, maybe you can unmute yourself and then you can ask the question.
Hi Rama, this is Anil Johari.
Hi,
Hello,
sir.
sir.
Welcome. Good evening. You're there in the
Good
session.
evening. Yeah, I was there in the session. I would like to just supplement what Karthi has said already. For more clarity, as you said, in this industry is still not clear about various things. It's a complex word now. Till 1995, there were different terminology is used. We used to use the term standards, and we used to say voluntary standards and mandatory standards. And we had examples. Mandatory standards were those which were legally made binding. For example, we had cement mandatory standard, or there were a number of them. WTO came in on 1st January 1995. We have this one agreement which Karthi referred to, TBT, Agreement on Technical Barriers to Trade. There's another important agreement which food people would know. It's called Agreement on Sanitary and Phytosanitary Measures, SPS agreement. So these two agreements are really important for for standards and quality professionals to know, because these two govern the trade now. SPS governs the trade on human health, animal health, and plant health. So anything which relates to food goes into SPS agreement, and rest of the goods are covered under TBT agreement. Now, this had two very significant effects on the standards, definitions, etc. Technical barriers to trade agreement defined two terms: one, standards; the other, technical regulations. And the standards became by definition voluntary. So now there is no longer the use of term mandatory standards. Standards by very definition means voluntary standards. When they are enforced by law, they are called technical regulations. So that is one change. So today we don't use the term mandatory standards. We should be saying standards and technical regulations. Standard means, by definition, means voluntary standards, and technical regulations means which are enforced by law. Second thing was, if you look at the, I don't have a presentation and I don't have the slides ready with me, but if you look at the definitions, there are, in TBT agreement there are definitions of standards and technical regulations. You'll find the definitions are almost similar, except one difference: standards are documents which are adopted voluntarily. Technical regulations are documents which are enforced by law. Another significant difference, because Karthi spoke about it, standards are made by consensus. That is the process used in most standards development. But the word consensus is missing in technical regulations for the simple reason that they relate to health and safety, and there cannot be consensus on health and safety. They have to be based on scientific output. So whatever that is, that has to be accepted. Third crucial thing which happened was, if you look at both TBT and SPS agreements named international bodies, which Karthi has not touched because they pertain to a particular sector. They name Codex Alimentarius Commission as an international standard setting body for food. They name IPPC, International Plant Protection Convention, as the international board standard setting body for plants. They name OIE, I'm not sure what is the expansion, it's slightly difficult for me. OIE as the international standard setting body for animal health. So there are three bodies named in SPS agreement, and therefore they have a special place because they are named in an international agreement. But the TBT agreement does not name any international standard setting body. So it does not name ISO, it does not name IEC. They do not have a place in that agreement. The reason is probably, in all probability, that ISO and IEC are not governmental bodies. They are non-governmental. Karthi rightly said ISO is a non-governmental body. But Codex and OIE and IPPC are governmental bodies, intergovernmental bodies. They are representations of government. So you will find that Codex is handled by FSSAI, OIE is handled by Department of Animal Husbandry, IPPC is handled by Department of Agriculture. But the ISO and IEC are even private standards bodies. BSI is a private standards body. So is ANSI in US. So are ASTM, API, ASME, all the names that Karthik took, they are all private also. So ISO is a non-governmental body, and standards bodies are private in many countries. In developing countries, they are governmental. So that actually makes a lot of confusion also, when they are governmental. There's a regulator called FSSAI, and then there is BIS, which makes standards on food, and then sometimes people wonder which one is which. But the fact is that despite being governmental, they are part of a non-governmental system. It's like NABCB also. IAF is a non-governmental body, and NABCB may be governmental, but it's part of a non-governmental system. So there's a separation between the two. So this distinction we should remember. And there are a number of other bodies. WHO is a standard setting body in a way for health kind of things. So when Codex and WHO make standards, they expect that there are regulations. You know, in health sector, in drugs, pharma, there are going to be regulations. In food, there are going to be regulations. So they are international standards because they are voluntary. But they are expected to be adopted in the regulations. So Codex expects that when it makes a standard, it gets adopted in the regulation of the country, which is the food regulation. Now, WHO expects, if there is a WHO GMP, that when you make your national regulations, you will adopt them. So that's another part which we should remember. One more part we should remember is the standards. I mean, we were taught when I was young in BIS, we were taught levels of standardization, international standards, regional standards. So you know that how many EN standards there are. Many of us are aware of EN standards because EN standards have got a primacy because EC relies on them for regulations. So every one of us knows EN standards. But there is a similar regional body in this part of the world also called Pacific Asia Standards Conference, PASC. Not much talked about because it doesn't produce regional standards. But we have a regional body called SARC, SARSO in Dhaka, which is a organization of SARC countries, and it is actually making SARC standards. It is actually coming out with SARC standards. So there is a concept of regional standards. Then the national standards like BIS, or it was ISI earlier in 1947 when it was set up. And then we also had a concept of industry level standards. So for steel, there is an industry level standard effort going on. And then there was a lowest level, we used to say company standards. So the company may have its own standards, which may be, relying on international standards, but can be stricter. You can have stricter tolerances. You can, aim for more excellence, more strict, specifications for your own product than the international or national standard says. So we should be aware of these distinctions because they make a lot of difference. That there are intergovernmental bodies which are into standard setting, international bodies like WHO, Codex, OIE, IPPC. ITU also incidentally is an international intergovernmental body. But ISO and IEC are not governmental bodies. They are non-governmental bodies. So is IAF. That's why the IAF MRAs that we talk about, or ILEC MRAs, are not automatically acceptable across the world because they are not governmental. If it was governmental, everybody would have to accept. But since they are non-governmental, so governments use their discretion to decide whether they want to accept the MRAs or MLAs or not accept. But the voluntary market does. So we should be very clear on these distinctions between technical regulations and standards. Outside the country, in India, we still use the term voluntary and mandatory standards. But if you go outside in international fora, they ask, and in fact, I was invited by WTO once, and a US lady sitting next to me asked me this question: what is this mandatory standard people are talking about? Because developing countries still talk about mandatory standards. So I told her, I joked with her, I said, these are voluntary standards which are made compulsory by law later on, and they become mandatory standards. So she laughed at that. But in international community, now standards means voluntary standards. When you say mandatory, they don't use the term mandatory standards, they use the term technical regulations. So we should be clear about these distinctions. And the WTO TBT as well as SPS agreements say that they encourage, they don't mandate, they encourage that in the regulations, the member nations should adopt international standards available so that there is unity around. Of course, in the outside the world, we understand that in TBT also, it's ISO, IC standards, which are generally being referenced. But there are other bodies. For example, for automotive sector, there's something called UNECE, which makes the standards which operate in the automotive sector, not necessarily ISO or IC. So there are like Codex is there for food. It's not ISO has a committee on foods, but those standards still remain voluntary, like ISO 22000, etc. But codex, whatever standards codex means, those are expected to be part of the regulations. So that are more important for a country than ISO standards. So we should have these distinctions clear to ourselves in terms of what is standard and what is technical regulation and what is SPS measure in what we say in food sector. It's called sanitary and phytosanitary measures. So interestingly, in food, there can be standards which are called sanitary and phytosanitary measure, which is about food safety. And there can be standards like organic, which are not about food safety, which are covered by TBT agreement because they are not about food safety. Organic is about fair trade, not food safety. So these distinctions we need to understand when we talk on this subject so that we are clear that when it is codex standard, it is going to be part of your regulation, expected to be part of your regulation. Only limited number of ISO standards will be part of a regulation, and most of them will be voluntary. But whereas codex, it would be expected all those standards will become part of a regulation because it's an intergovernmental body named in SPS agreement. That's all. I just wanted to supplement to bring about more clarity.
Thank you so much, sir, because most of this, as what you're quoting and pointing out, are all sector specific also. So sector specific, and some of these are actually technical specifications or regulations or guidelines also. And it's a vast domain. Actually, technically speaking, the standards as a subject, we need to do it sector specific. When we do it, then that sector related specific international standards, which are maybe voluntary, or the technical regulations we can cover, and otherwise it's too horizontal, I guess.
Yeah, actually, IEC, which incidentally came up in 1906, it preceded ISO, was focused on electrical only. It's only ISO when it came up. So there was an agreement between the two that ISO will not touch these sectors. So ISO doesn't touch electrical, electronics, and IT sectors. But sometimes they have joint committees, ISO, IEC committees.
We do have industry refers most often those ASTM standards, ANSI standards. That's what they're country specific, sector specific.
I mean, we should all know that US has an entirely different system of standard setting.
Yes.
ANSI is the national standards body, American National Standards Institute. However, it does not develop a single standard. What it does, it sort of, which is a wrong word to use, it accredits standards development organizations in the country. They have 200 plus organizations which are accredited by ANSI, including ASME, API, ASTM, even UL, NSF. There are a number of bodies. And several of those standards produced by them are designated national standards by ANSI. So they are dual numbered. So ANSI by itself doesn't, unlike BIS, which develops standard by itself, ANSI doesn't develop standards by itself. PSI also develops standard by itself. It's only in US that we have this system. Most other countries, national standards bodies develop standards by themselves. It's only US and to some extent Canada who use the system, and I think Australia also, who use the system of standards development organizations.
Maybe the structures.
Of course, separately, third breed is this industry-driven or private standards like IAQG in aerospace or IATF in automotive sector, or so many private standards that we have. OSAS was there, now it's going away. OSAS 18001, or SA 8000, which is created by a private organization, or Global Gap, or BRC. A number of them which are private standards, totally private, not national. Some of them are industry-driven. For example, AS 9100 is an industry-driven standard. IATF is an industry-driven standard. But some of them are absolutely private. They are driven actually by retailers. In many places, they are driven by retailers. So we have these, this complex now. So the industry needs to know what does it need to comply with. If I have to just sum up what industry needs to look at, first thing it's to look at is whether the sector in which it is operating regulated in their own country, which is India, number one. If it is regulated, then you need to look at what the regulator has prescribed, number one. Second, if you want to export, again, same thing, because many less sectors are regulated in India than, for example, in Europe. So what is unregulated in India, you may find is regulated in Europe. So you need to find out whether that sector is regulated in the destination country where you want to export. If it is regulated, you need to find out what are the standards prescribed or what are the regulations prescribed. That's the first one. Second, you need to find out what is the market demanding, because regulations are one stage, but the market is demanding more than that. So if you want to export to Europe, for example, they may demand that you should be BRC certified or IFS certified when it comes to food, despite all the regulations. So ultimately, I have to sell my product to the buyer. And if the buyer says, I want this certification, then now going to Europe, you have no choice but to comply with the regulations on food, for example. But selling in Europe, you have a choice. If somebody says, I want BRC certification and you think it's too costly for you, you may decide not to sell to that buyer. You may go to another buyer who's happy with ISO 22000 or with FSSC 22000. So you have a choice. But as far as regulations are concerned, you have no choice. So the industry is faced by the regulations, first thing, domestic and importing, because domestic regulation and importing regulation, there is a gap, either non-regulated domestic market or our regulations are lower than the global regulations. So that's the first part. Second part is the more well-known voluntary standards like ISO 9001 or 14001 or 22000, which the buyers may be demanding. Third part is the industry-driven standards. Like if you are in automotive sector, it's almost obligatory that you go for IATF. If you are in aerospace sector, it's almost obligatory that your buyer will not settle for anything less than the S9100 certification. And the fourth is the purely that private kind of standards, which are driven by retailers or somebody, which are also again demand of your market.
Yes.
Just to conclude, I'll give you a very interesting example. I went to Germany. I was sensitized that India is exporting stone to Germany, granite stone. And there are concerns about whether that granite stone is quarried from quarries which are environmentally compliant, which are socially compliant. So there is a certification for stones just to satisfy the German customer that these are coming for quarries where environmental compliance is there, where there is no child labor, where workers are treated fairly, they are safe, etc. So these are the kind of concerns in the developed society, because this granite stone is used in Germany in cemeteries. So it's a sensitive issue. It's a sentimental issue. People who are ordering granite stone are ordering for their beloved ones who are dying. So it's a sensitive issue. And therefore, there is a certification of stones. You would be surprised that there is a certification of stones going on from India to Germany and Europe. So these are the kind of concerns which are driving more and more standards coming in the market in private sector, because there are concerns which may not be concerns in India, but they are concerns in the developed market. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for a detailed explanation, sir. Maybe this is the very first initiative, because we really wanted to impress upon the industry about all this. Maybe the subsequent sessions will cover it in a more a detailed manner. Yes, because now the standards are becoming schemes also. We need to at a national level, because again, those are all your domestic requirements. Now suddenly we find standards are getting slowly replaced with schemes. And yes, there are industry developed standards and things like that. A very interesting explanation, sir. Thank you so much, because still we wanted to make industry understand that the standards and certification bodies and accreditation, the structure is actually, it has multiple layers, and they're all interchangeably used most often. And we wanted to actually showcase the role of standards bodies and what role they play, whether at a national level or an international level. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the detailed explanation. Thanks for joining us to listen. So any questions from the audience, please? Sir is Mr. Anil Jawri. Sir was the former CEO of NABCB, the National Accreditation Board for Certification Bodies. Sir is a mentor to various platforms and various industry initiatives, and Consultants Consortium of Chennai is a blessing of getting connected and kind of, having his constant mentorship. He keeps advising us and on this industry engagement initiatives also. And we keep learning so much from sir all the time. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. So any questions, please, from the audience? If there are no questions, maybe can we wind up the session, Karthi?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Is there any questions in the chat box? I don't think so,
No,
right?
no question.
Yeah. So let me just do the closing part also. So I'd like to thank Mr. Paneer for joining us today and for showcasing what they have been implementing in their organization, implementing various standards and their commitment and their sustainability initiatives, and using standards to drive some social initiatives also. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Paneer, and we will keep inviting you, sir, for some future sessions also, because understanding the industry perspective is always important, and we wanted the other stakeholders from the industry also to see what kind of initiatives that each organization is doing in implementing the standards and various management systems. And thank you, Karthi, for the detailed session. And as sir was mentioning, then I would request you to address all these key aspects, maybe get back to sir, and then, you can extend and elaborate and extrapolate this and make it more horizontal also, this topic on international standards and national standards for the future sessions. Thank you so much for the participants, audience who have joined us today. And we will continue to do this session on a frequent basis. Somebody is asking, yes, please, this will be there in the YouTube. All the sessions are getting recorded. It will be updated in the YouTube of CCC also. Please keep visiting our blog. Consultants Consortium of Chennai website has a blog, lot of industry information updates, programs. We keep sharing it there. And next month is going to be quality month. November is the month of quality, and International Quality Day is on November 12th. So association is planning a couple of industry education series jointly with industry associations and maybe the chambers of commerce. We will be inviting all of you, all of you to participate in all the engagements. Thank you so much. So thanking the wonderful audience for their patient participation today. Thank you so much.